Hello AP Stats and welcome to Chapter 4, Designing Experiments. Before we begin this chapter, I just really want to stress to you the importance of making sure that you learn and understand all the vocabulary involved in this chapter. There's not very much mathematical computation, but in order to be successful, you do have to know a lot of vocabulary. So as you see things that we are highlighting for vocab words, those are things you're going to want to sit down, learn, memorize, and make sure you understand. Okay, so let's begin Chapter 4, Designing Experiments. We're going to start today with section 4.1, and we're going to split this up into two parts, and today we're going to look at Part 1. And section 4.1 talks about sampling and surveys. So our learning targets for this section, we're going to identify the population and sample in a statistical study. You will be asked that on quizzes and tests to be able to identify those two parts of a study. You're going to identify voluntary response sampling, convenience sampling, and explain how these sampling methods can lead to bias. So again, being able to determine what type of sampling is used and how they can result in bias. And describe how to select a simple random sample with technology or a table of random digits. All of these targets are things that you will have to be able to show that you understand when you quiz and test on this chapter. All right, so let's begin. Populations and samples. Statistics is largely practiced in order to make inferences about populations of individuals based upon a sample chosen to represent the population. In this section, we are going to explore how to sample populations. So, first things first, what is a population? Population in a statistical study, it's the entire group of individuals about which we want information. A sample is only going to be part of the population from which we actually collect the information. So a sample is just part of the population. We use the information from a sample to draw conclusions about the entire population. Okay. The other thing that we do want to note is there is such a thing called a census, and a census gathers information and data from an entire population. So many times, though, to conduct a census, a lot of work, time, and money. And there is a census that is conducted, but in order to gather information about a population, we are going to use samples. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the first example. Identify the population and sample in each of the following examples. The student government at a high school surveys 100 of the students at the school to get their opinion about a change in the bell schedule. What is the population? Who is it that we want to find information about? The population in this case is all students at the high school. So therefore, what did we use as a sample to be able to find information out about our population? Well, if we go back and read, it says they surveyed 100 students at the high school. So the sample is the 100 students chosen. For Part B, the quality control manager at a bottling company selects a sample of 10 cans. Right there I can see it's telling me it selects a sample of 10 cans from the production line every hour to see whether the volume of soda is acceptable within the limits. What is the population? Well, we're sampling 10 cans from a production line, so we are sampling from all possible cans. So our population is all the cans produced. from the reading, we could see what the sample is. The sample is the 10 cans chosen. Okay. So now we're going to take a look at the idea of a sample survey. The first step in a sample survey is to say exactly what the population we want to describe. Okay, so that is going to be the first step. Step number 1 is to tell us exactly what population we want to describe. Then the second step is to say exactly what we want to measure. That is, give definitions to our variables. Okay, we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So this is the second step right here. The term sample survey is reserved for studies that use an organized plan to choose a sample to represent a population. The final step in planning a survey is to decide how to choose a sample from the population. So these are the 3 steps that we are going to use in order to design a sample survey. It should be noted that a survey or a sample survey does not only refer to studies where people are asked questions. Choosing the cans in the example above is a type of sample survey. So again, it's not just people. We could have different kinds of objects, animals, and so on. Okay, so let's take a look at how to sample badly. One of the ways in which we can sample badly is by using a convenience sample. So again, definitions are important. What is a convenience sample? It's just like it sounds. You're choosing individuals that are easiest to reach. It's out of convenience. That's how you're selecting your sample. Okay. So, and if we were to wanted to collect information about the students at Ford High School, for me, a convenient sample would be to choose students in this AP Stats class. So I would use this class to represent the students at HF2. Now, if I was to just choose the students in this class to represent all the students at the high school, would this be a good representation of Ford High School? No, because we're only got, mostly seniors, some juniors in this class. We're leaving out all the 9th and 10th graders. We're leaving out students who don't continue on to take higher level math classes. So we are going to see that convenience sample often produce unrepresentative data. And convenience samples are almost guaranteed to be biased. So convenience samples, very easy to choose to collect data from, but it's not a good representation of your population. The design of a statistical study shows bias if it systematically favors certain outcomes. So bias is when it's going to systematically favor certain outcomes. It's going to consistently under or overestimate results. That's going to be an important note. It's going to consistently under or overestimate results. And this is going to be important when taking the AP exam. When asked to identify bias, they're asking you to identify the direction of the bias. Okay, so you need to tell me the direction. Does it overestimate or does it underestimate? What's the direction of the bias? That's going to be an important AP exam tip. And we'll see some practice questions with that as well. Okay, so let's take a look at this example right here. A parent of an athlete is concerned about cuts to the athletic budget. She asks spectators at a game what they think. Why is this a biased method? What is the direction of the bias? Okay, well, let's think about this. The parent of an athlete is concerned about cuts to the athletic budget. So who is she asking? She's asking spectators at a game what they think. Obviously, if they're spectators at the game, they probably are there because they're either a parent or of a athlete or family member or friend of an athlete, so they're really into sports and enjoy the games. So if we take a look here, this is definitely going to show some bias. It's going to systematically favor the same outcome. If we think about this, if you're asking someone at the sports game about whether they agree or disagree with the athletic budget cut, if they're at the sports game, they're probably not going to be in favor of the budget cut. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're probably going to have more people who are going to disagree with the budget cut than had you just asked random or sampled in another random way, okay, to get a better representation. So why is this a biased method? It is biased because it systematically favors the same outcome. Each sample would probably overestimate the proportion of people who disagree with the cuts. That last sentence is important because, again, you are going to have to identify the direction of the bias, and the second sentence right here is your direction of the bias. It's overestimating the proportion of people who disagree with the budget cuts. Okay, another way that we can sample badly is using voluntary samples. A voluntary response sample consists of people who choose themselves by responding to a general appeal. So voluntary response is when people choose themselves to be in the sample. They're volunteering themselves to be part of it. Voluntary response samples show bias because people with strong opinions, often in the same direction, are going to be the ones most likely to respond. I like to shop on Amazon, and anytime I purchase something on Amazon, they usually will send me a survey in my email asking me to take a survey about the product they purchase. And to be honest, I have never really filled any of those surveys out that I can think of. I think the only time I would want to fill something out is most likely if I wasn't happy with the item, which really I should probably take time to thank people and tell them how happy I am to help their business. But, that's life and you're busy. So if we think about that, that is a voluntary sample. Okay. Customer surveys after purchase. Because it's up to the person if they decide if they're going to take the survey. And many times when people do that, it's usually because they are not happy. Okay. Another example of voluntary response would be write-in and call-in opinion polls. Okay. When it's write-in and call-in, it's people who have a strong opinion about that or taking the time to write in and call in. They are going to lead to strong bias. Okay, so write in and call in opinion polls. They will lead to strong bias. And another problem with voluntary samples is that people often respond more than one time. Okay, so let's take a look at the check your understanding. Again, as we do these problems, you can pause the video and try it on your own to see how you do, or you can just continue to practice with me. All right, so let's take a look. Check your understanding. For each of the following situations, identify the sampling method used, then explain how the sampling method could lead to bias. A farmer brings a juice company several crates of oranges each week. A company inspector, he looks at 10 oranges from the top of the crate. Let's identify that. So he looks at 10 oranges from the top of the crate before deciding whether to buy all the oranges. What kind of sample is this? Is this a convenience sample or is it a voluntary sample? Well, he's inspecting the top 10 oranges at the top of the crate. That is going to be a convenient sample because it's very easy to just inspect the top 10. So this is a convenient sample. I always have a hard time spelling that. It is CONVEN. There we go. VENIENCE. It's a convenient sample. And how could this lead to bias? Well, if we think about this, if the farmer knows he's only going to inspect the top 10 oranges, he's going to put his 10 best oranges on top. Those 10 best oranges may not be a true representative of all of the oranges in the crate, so this could tend to overestimate the quality of the oranges. Okay, so how does this lead to bias? This could lead the inspector to overestimate the quality of the oranges because the best ones are on top. All right, let's take a look at the next check understanding. Number 2. The ABC program Nightline once asked whether the United Nations should continue to have its headquarters in the U.S. Viewers were invited to call one telephone number to respond yes or another for no. There was a charge for calling either number. More than 186,000 callers responded, and 67% said no. What kind of sample method is this? Is this a convenience sample or voluntary sample? Well, viewers are choosing to respond if they want to or not by calling in. This is a voluntary sample. How is this going to lead to bias? Well, we know that when people are volunteering themselves to be part of a survey, they obviously have some strong opinions about the topic at hand. So those with strong opinions are most likely to respond. Okay, so if we think about this, those who are happy that the UN headquarters is in the US already have what they want, and they're going to be less likely to respond. Okay, so this sampling method is really going to overestimate those who are saying no. Okay, so if we think about this, and again, you're going to see that, especially in this unit, there is a lot of writing involved, so it is very important that you are explaining yourself clearly. And that is part of statistics, being able to explain and write your ideas. So hang in there. Those who are happy that the UN headquarters is in the US already, have what they want, and might be less likely to respond. So now you need to, again, state the direction of this bias. What is it overestimating? What is it underestimating? So since those who are happy are going to be less likely to respond, it's going to overestimate the people who are saying no. Okay. So overestimates the proportion. And again, that's the proportion is the percentage who respond with no. Or you could say it's going to underestimate those who respond with yes. So again, stating the overestimating or underestimating is the direction of the bias, and it is very important that you are able to do that.